Hey guys, it's Swigs. Welcome to patch 13 and all the bells and whistles this patch brings. While it pains me that my old build videos have become painfully obsolete, it is a worthy sacrifice to the altar as we gain so many new ways to purge heretics in our favorite game. And certainly I did not miss them buffing my Eviscerator, that is for sure. But this build is really inspired by many more positive changes that were introduced from the latest drop. Not only is the Eviscerator able to actually do more damage and cleave through targets now, we're also seeing a rework to Shred and its weapon change condition. And we have a freight container's worth of new talents to work with, which makes the old bleed build look weak in comparison. And so this video shall go over the brand new and very fun build focused on stacking crits, spamming charges, and slaying enemies with the coolest ripstick across all of Atoma. Also, if you're new here, consider subscribing or becoming a channel member. Members and Super Chats both receive priority responses in the comments for questions and video ideas, and your support goes a long way to the channel. Anyway, back to business. So how are we going to be making this build function? Well, of course, the first priority will be maximizing the critical chance of our weapons so that crits are as likely to happen as possible. However, there is a fork in the road as we gotta choose sort of one of two kind of approaches to get the most out of the high crit percentage that we're going to be building to. One method would be to attack so often with a quick weapon that we proc the critical chance percentage as quickly as possible. And the other would be to cleave as many enemies as possible in a single attack so that way when the critical does trigger, we're getting as many critical trigger instances as possible for that attack. In reality, this is more of a spectrum, and we can either balance this approach or lean one way or another. But if it isn't clear yet from our intro, we are going balls to the wall in the cleave direction. While we will take any build opportunities we come across to increase the speed of our attacks, our weapon itself shall be a monolith of rip and tear, the Eviscerator, and as such will be slower but wide-reaching in its attacks. And now that we have that previous 3-target damage cap scrubbed from the weapon and its cleave just buffed so much, we can guarantee that if a crit is scored in a horde, we are getting our money's worth for our trouble. And so with our assignment understood, let's get into how to make this build happen. First off, obviously, the Eviscerator is going to be picked as our primary weapon. Now, if you just hate fun and rule of cool badassery, you can choose something like the heavy sword for similar and, I mean, let's just admit it, likely more potent results. But for all intents and purposes, this will be the weapon of choice for this video, and the one that I've personally playtested on Auric Damnation difficulty, so I would probably try to give the Eviscerator at least a chance with this build. As for our desired perks and blessings, focusing on increasing Flak and Maniac is the standard go-to for relative damage buffs. This specific Eviscerator I'm running does have a increase to melee crit chance in place of our Flak modifier, but this is kind of just simply happenstance, and this increase isn't really going to be necessary when you see the crit chances that we're going to be working with later. Seriously, this baby can fit so much crit in it, it is not even funny. For blessings, Savage Sweep is still really going to be a solid performance boost for the Eviscerator, and the additional cleave is going to help bolster the amount of crit instances that we can obtain within a single heavy swipe. And naturally for the crit chance engine, we'll be running Shred for the additional stackable crit chance on chained hits. Chained hits, mind you, that continue chaining even while sliding, blocking, and pushing, allowing us to use all of our cool techniques as a melee death machine while ripping our enemies apart. And as for our secondary weapon, the Cantriel is where I've kind of landed so far. We need something that can appropriately counter Ragers who can tank our weapon swing's impact, and the Dragon's Breath also gives us excellent range removal in case our team isn't packing something capable of taking snipers out. And plus, in really dense and stressful encounters, we can just let that Dragon's Breath roar down a choked tunnel and watch numbers fly. The Cantriel that I'm bringing has additional damage for Unyielding and Maniac enemies. You could swap Unyielding out for Flak, but I already find that the breakpoints against Flak enemies are plenty sufficient for the Cantriel in practice, and having that additional Unyielding damage helps make this build a bit more potent against bosses and absolutely bullies the Ogryn enemies as well. Blessing-wise, we're bringing No Respite and Fire Frenzy. Fire Frenzy is just kind of a no-brainer increase to our damage as long as we're killing, and No Respite is great for scoring the killing blow on an enemy that we're already in the process of boring a shotgun blast-sized hole into. Now on to the part that we're all kind of probably waiting for and the really meaty part of this video, our talent tree. This is also really experimental of a section, as I'm just really not sure how I want to be covering this sort of going forward. We certainly are not going to be able to go into every option and do this full dissertation on every node we are choosing or ignoring, as that could keep us here for hours. But at least the way I feel I have it done, I'm pretty happy with, so without any more waste, with haste, let's dive right in. First off, we do want to plan kind of a general route for key nodes that we see ourselves wanting to use with this build. We definitely need to be taking a trip down the stabby stab path to the right since it has Scourge and it's a really powerful part of this crit engine. Another path to aim for is through the middle path, as Shield of Contempt is a very strong ability that grants an excellent level of sustainability for us and our allies in coherency. And since we do plan on mosh pitting pretty hard in this build, pushing for this will help prevent instant downs if we're folded in on or ambushed from behind. Plus, being neighbors to Hammer of Faith can help grant a ton of crowd control with our already wide-reaching weapon. Next, we do want to zigzag a bit, since Fury of the Faithful is going to be the best ability to spam while we reap hordes of heretics in the arena. Stealth is not a bad option here, but the playstyle is more in-your-face frontliner, and the stagger we get from the charge just makes us much better of a bulldozer in this regard. And lastly, we do want our Keystone ability to be Blazing Piety for the obvious reason of just even more crit chances to fuel the fire, and on the way is Invocation of Death, which is pretty much a load-bearing pillar for this build's engine. So let's start building our path. First, we're journeying to the right and taking Backstabber. Though we won't be doing much in terms of sneaky, it's necessary for the path and can help a lot while dancing bulwarks too, so it's not a bad perk either. Naturally next is Scourge, so that we can make them baddies bleed while securing the first engine component or spamming our crits. Next, we're going to be pushing farther down the right path and taking the 15% extra toughness and snagging Enduring Faith for that excellently tanky 50% toughness damage reduction passive on crit. And you'll be damned if we don't get another crit within that 4-second window to reset the cooldown and keep this passive going. Now you may think that we'll be taking the knife with this forward push, but we're actually going to backtrack and take Disdain from the left path, since the damage buff will be guaranteed when we're chewing on that horde. And with our side routes finished, we're actually going to be taking the middle path to get to the next section. Anoint with Blood is going to be super nice for making our shotgun a death cannon in the fray, and Purge the Unclean is disgustingly good for its 20% damage boost for infecting and unyielding. The infected boost is going to help us a ton with eliminating hounds quickly and with ease, and also provide an extra boost to damage when we're dealing with cleaving poxies and getting a better cleave distribution with it. And the unyielding boost also helps us bully Ogrins just even more, and makes us stronger against monstrosity bosses as well. Continuing on, we're going to be taking the extra 15% toughness and Voice of Terror, which is great for when we're taking pot shots with our shotgun and need to sustain a bit of incoming damage during a firefight. And finally, we're going to be taking the Immolation Grenade, our blitz of choice. This helps us secure breathing room similar to the Stunstorm Grenade, but I feel it's a bit more versatile as it can be used to deny paths, funnel enemies into kill boxes, and provide a safe area while reviving allies that were caught in a horde and need a little pick-me-up. The throwing knife isn't a bad option either, but I feel the shotgun is going to be kind of our quick targeted removal while being in the fray. And the perks we're going to be getting with the Immolation Grenade just kind of outweigh the perks we would otherwise get while using throwing knives. And fortunately, the next section of our tree, literally, is much more straightforward. The right path rewards a sense of mobility and nimbleness that we're just not going to be quite obtaining while wielding a two-handed chainsaw. Anti-Raft Be Swift is less helpful than it used to be, as slides no longer provide that 100% toughness damage reduction like they used to. And the left path can be useful for grabbing Until Death and Holy Revenant, but the Eviscerator just isn't strong enough to stack enough damage and secure a strong enough heal to make it really worth taking. So taking a bit more preemptive approach to tanking is going to just serve us a lot better, and that'll be through the middle path. And so we take that extra 15% toughness and Emperor's Bullet to start down that path. One key note to mention is that our shotgun reloads a single shell at a time, which makes Emperor's Bullet incredibly easy to trigger manually if we play towards it. Emptying your current shells and only reloading a single shell at a time before interrupting the reload with either a sprint forward or going ADS means that we can swap to our shoddy, empty a shell in a heretic's face, and then trigger that impact and attack speed buff as soon as we want. This technique is definitely more of an option though, and it really isn't critical for the build's overall performance. But it's a fun interaction to keep in mind, And if you can get it to go off, it's pretty fun to have while you're sort of punching down the horde in the fray. Continuing our journey in the tree, we'll be taking Shield of Contempt for the aforementioned tanky boost it provides the team, and Hammer of Faith for the impact and crowd control boost. Plus, Beacon of Purity will end up being our aura for this path. Personally, I feel like I'd rather have Benediction instead of Beacon, as it'll be more helpful for the team in general, but Beacon's still plenty valuable in slowing down Grimoire corruption, dealing with corruption chip damage, and undigesting your favorite players after a monstrosity fight, so it's still not the worst aura pick all the same. And equally as straightforward after our aura, we'll be beelining towards Fury of the Faithful to upgrade our Chastise ability, and we'll be taking the 5% toughness damage reduction and 15% toughness nodes along the way. But Fury of the Faithful is an excellent upgrade for this build. The stagger, extra attack speed, toughness regen, the instant guaranteed crit, and the extra damage in general are just so goddamn good when challenging a horde, and the momentum it grants you is just so damn fun to play with. And because we love it so much, we're going to be taking it twice with redoubled zeal. This extra charge slot means that when we're going to be later cheating to recharge this ability, we can overcharge and start reducing the countdown for the second slot in the background for our ability, which kind of helps smooth out our general performance while recharging ability, and quicken how fast we're able to spam it. And next, we'll be taking the whole damn line of player buffs, taking the mandatory 5% suppression buff towards Blazing Piety's branch, but also the 5% toughness damage reduction, and 5% extra melee damage nodes. Not only are these super useful on their own, but we're going to be taking these so we can secure 2 more passives to boost this build's performance, taking Faithful Frenzy for the faster attack speed it provides, and Sustained Assault for even more easy stackable damage buffs. And continuing our actual path forward, we take Punishment, a necessary pick, but also another boost to our impact that'll continue to improve our general field of control. And after this, we'll follow the line and take the 5% movement speed node as well. The next pick is honestly the easiest decision in this whole build, as we literally do need Invocation of Death for our engine, and without it, we won't have that sweet spam of our Fury of the Faithful charge. And finally, we select our keystone, Blazing Piety, another crit engine component, which is very easy to trigger while sawing through a melee brawl, especially if you're staying in coherency, since the trigger isn't on a personal kill, just on any death within 20 meters of your position. And to cap off this build, we upgrade our keystone with Fury Rising, making Blazing Piety that much easier to trigger, and Righteous Warrior, which brings our Fury's crit chance bonus to a hefty 25%. Now after everything is said and done, for those curious of our maximum possible critical chance, which isn't impossible to maintain either, mind you, we'll sum up the 30% from our max stacks of Scourge, 20% from our max Wrath stacks from our weapon, and 25% from Blazing Piety's Fury, totaling 75% chance for crits. And even if we aren't within our Fury window, with those buffs, we've got a base 50% boost for each of our swings, so it's literally a coin flip on crits when this thing's going. Now we've finished covering the build itself, I want to take a moment to just kind of showcase some gameplay from the build in action on some Auric missions, and share a few tips for players trying this build out for the first time. One important thing to keep in mind is just how fast you charge up your combat ability. Because of this, it should not be conserved as much as you may be used to, and spamming it for guaranteed criticals, toughness regen, and its general stagger aura is the best way for this build to become the wrecking ball it's meant to be. Anytime you've got charges of your ability, you should be actively searching for a chance to dispense them onto Nurgle's enemies. And really only keeping one in your back pocket as a toughness boost or a quick retreat is necessary to play it safe. Also, due to the build prioritizing the efficacy of your equipment, we just don't have a ton in terms of actual toughness recovery besides spamming our charge. Because of this, it's best to keep an extra eye out for your teammates and maintain a strong sense of coherency with your team as much as possible. Not only will this help grant additional heals for yourself, but your aura will also be much more impactful to your team if your team's actually in it. Not to mention, your team has their own auras to grant you, and sticking to them like glue will provide you more than just the healies for your feelies. The build is also very focused towards the Call of the Brawl, and it lacks some of the stronger, longer range removal options that we have at our disposal. You can still tap fire specials with pretty impressive range and use your Dragon's Breath to melt snipers from a farther distance, but Marking them for your team will be much more efficient, and it's best to leave this task to your psychers or veterans when possible. And in general, keep in mind that strong ranged lines like bajillion Reapers or bajillion Gunners are going to be a significant threat for this build in practice. Now remember that your Eviscerator is still going to be a bit weak to waves of Ragers that can windmill through your attacks and deal plenty of incoming damage to you. Your Shoddy in this regard is going to be your best friend here, and you can whip that baby out to reduce their head to a bloody stump real fast. And also, don't forget your nades. These baddies are very helpful not just for saving your team's skin in a pinch, but also making fiery walls that can bottleneck enemies into tighter chokes, or otherwise just create an excellent field of battle as you reap souls bathed in your holy flames light. You can't bring grenades to extraction or to the afterlife, so a Dragon's Horde of Fire serves you no damn good other than avoiding the smell of burning heretic, and a proper Zealot loves that smell too. As for the trick with Emperor's Bullet, if you want to use it, but don't want to necessarily run around with a single shell loaded all the time, reload just a handful instead. Having roughly half a clip loaded at a time will help it be easier to vacate your weapon of ammo and get that Emperor's Bullet buff, while also still having enough in your remaining magazine, so that way you can put a heretic into the dirt in a quick pinch if you need to. Also remember that by not running thy Wrathbeast Whip, you do not have stun immunity, and you can lose your charge's wings if you get caught by enemies Gatling gun mid-charge. This is another benefit to consciously maintaining coherency with your team and playing a more supportive, tanky role, as you'll be less inclined to make those suicidal charges that leave you stranded and ready to be punished by firing squads and their hailstorm of bullets. And finally, don't be too afraid to rev your chainsaw in front of a horde. While revving usually is reserved for strong single-target removal and damage, if you have a field of weak horde chaff in front of you, the cleave boost from your weapon's special heavy 1 attack cuts through those enemies like hot knife through butter, achieving a functionality pretty similar to power swords or force swords. But also don't go hog wild with it either, and use it consciously when it's safe to do so, since any specialist in the crowd with enough armor may just end up taking your weapon's priority, and you can easily be punished by a horde you're swinging at if your weapon is jammed up in a Rager's chest. And that's about it. Personally, I've been having a lot of fun with this build, but honestly this whole game has just been a huge breath of fresh air and so much more fun after the latest patch. So maybe I'm just biased. But try this build out and let me know in the comments if it's been serving your purgation cravings well. But that's all for this video. If you liked the video, drop a like, comment if I missed anything, and have a great day. Until next time, see ya!